Hello, everyone. My name is Brody McGowan, and this is an episode of For the Fans podcast. Once again, we are joining you all here for what is now episode 10, and also the second episode of our new Steelers series, which is featuring my good friend Micah Bonenstengel over here. Micah, I'd just like you to say hello.
Hi, guys. It's me once again. Happy to do another episode with Brody and talk about them Steelers.
Yeah, so before we get going with this, I would like to just get a couple of things going that I feel like just more of like housekeeping things that I'd like to discuss before we get started with the Steelers content. And this should be quick. The first thing is today we are joined luckily by a good friend once again, David, who is here doing the cameras for us. David is also known as Captain Cuber. We have had him on a couple of videos before, and the fact that he's taken time out of his day here today to shoot some camera work for us. David, of course, was the Rubik's Cube TikTok kid, and we are once again asking that you subscribe to his TikTok content at Captain Cuber, because he's very nice to come out here today and help us out with this.
Hey, I asked you, so.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing is, we also have the baseball photos, which you can go in, and if we hit 30 likes on the previous video, which is the week 1 of the Steelers series that we have up here, then if we hit 30 likes on that, then we are going to post those baseball photos, which we mentioned in the last post. In fact, I will make this easier for all of you. If we hit 30 likes on any of the posts that we have up, we will put those baseball photos out, and those will be linked on our Instagram. So with that, Micah, would you like to start going over the game? And just some of the big moments, because I feel like this game was divided into a couple of big moments. So would you like to discuss kind of the first big moment that occurred?
Yeah, so this was a game that was 17-14. It was a pretty low-scoring game. So the first drive was a field goal for New England. They took a 3-0 lead. And then, unfortunately, Mitch Trubisky did throw an interception. He threw it into double coverage. And so this is one of the things we'll talk about later in the video of the struggles and the problems that Mitch Trubisky has run into. In addition to that, Minkah Fitzpatrick this week once again with another pick, this time off of Mac Jones in the secondary. It was very nice work from him. And then you also had, later in the game, you had a Cam Sutton dropped pick followed by a muffed punt on the very next play, which I think was a key factor in the Steelers losing this game.
Let's go first into the Mitchell Trubisky interception, because when you look at that play, every single thing about the interception was quite simply Mitch Trubisky didn't see someone there, and what looked like, to be honest, a pretty dumb interception.
Yeah, I think he threw it into a lot of heavy traffic. I think there were other receivers that he could have thrown to in that particular instance, and he's just got to be smarter with his eyes being downfield and where he's looking to pass to.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think the next thing that we should probably discuss about after that would be the Minkah Fitzpatrick interception that we then had on the next drive. Because I feel like that was kind of a game-changing of a play of some sort, and you were just like, okay, that has to be something that should be mentioned. I guess all that I'd really say about Minkah Fitzpatrick is that he's making a play to be Defensive Player of the Year.
He is making waves here at the start of the season. He's had a tremendous impact in Game 1. He's done what he can, certainly in Week 2, even though the result didn't go our way, but even when at the point whenever the interception was made, it was a big momentum swing, and it helped us to stay in the game.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like Minkah, just with the plays that he's making early on in these first 2 weeks, like, people should seriously start discussing him in Defensive Player of the Year conversations, just because of the level of an impact that he has had, even in the loss.
Yes, of course.
Was the case. Right now, I'd probably say it's between him and Micah Parsons of Dallas, but who has also been awesome so far this year. But like, that was definitely something to factor into this game, was the game-changing moment that was the Fitzpatrick interception. The next thing was the Steelers were going into half, and you're like, right before half, and you're like, okay, this team should probably kind of hold up, and things should be fine, and we'll go in tied to half. And then you had that Nelson Agholor play.
Yeah, Nelson Agholor is typically, I don't think that a lot of people would have thought he would have made that catch, but when you looked at the replay, that was really a great catch over the top of Witherspoon there to score the touchdown for New England.
And I will say something about that. I do not think that plays on Witherspoon.
No, I think that was, looking back on it, I saw that it was great coverage. He was right on him with the whole play, and unfortunately, he just caught it, and what can you do about that?
Sometimes there's a type of play where it's like you have to just respect the opposition and be like, sure, you were in the area in which to do something, but if somebody makes an awesome play, it's more just, it's not really against you, it's more just like, yeah, that was a great play by them, too.
Yeah, you just have to tip the cap to that, as much as it sucks. I mean, it's a great play. That's why you watch football. That's why you watch sports, quite honestly, is to see stuff like that. So
Another example, just from another Steelers game that I would mention, would be Marlon Humphrey forcing the fumble against Juju. I think that was a couple of years ago.
yeah.
In overtime, where it was just like, Marlon Humphrey is a great football player, so
Right.
you're just kind of like, you're like, I'm not going to blame Juju. It's the same thing where you're not going to blame Akello for having great coverage on a guy and him just making a spectacular play.
Right.
So that may have been one of the bigger downfalls of this team.
I think another thing that I would also like to note is that you did see the impact of the T.J. Watt injury with regards to not being able to put nearly as much pressure on Mac Jones as you would have liked. I think that allowed him a lot of opportunities to throw the ball, particularly with that play, particularly getting the ball downfield at times, as well as to Jacoby Myers over the middle and whatnot.
Jacoby Myers had a very good game for him.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers also did very well in that game.
This should be mentioned. We are not a fantasy football channel in any means, at least not yet. But Jacoby Myers is definitely the type of guy who I might be picking up on waiver wire this week.
Yeah, I think that might be a good play.
That might be.
I would also say, on the Minka pick, I also just wanted to mention this, is that Alex Highsmith did a very nice job of putting pressure on Mac Jones, forcing that error there from him.
Alex Highsmith had a good game overall, but it wasn't anything incredible where you're like, okay, he didn't have any sacks, but it was clear that he was dialing up the pressure.
Yeah, I felt that he had a very solid performance.
I mean, he is not T.J. Watt, but
No.
who is T.J. Watt? Nobody. So you're kind of just taking that as it is. So with that, you then have the second game-changing drive or sequence within this game, which starts at the third down. Cam Sutton dropped interception, and then leads to the Gunnar Olszewski drop punt, which were both just like the real game-changing moments.
This was a huge momentum swing in this game. It gave the Patriots another touchdown. And then whenever you do that, it's kind of tough for the Steelers, at that point to try to win that game. But that was a big moment in the game, too.
So Cam Sutton, of course, it was third down, and he drops that interception. I wouldn't be one to blame that on Cam Sutton, because yes, it was a good play to knock it down, and yes, it would have helped if Sutton had gotten the interception, but that wasn't truly a killing moment. And also, Cam Sutton has had a reasonably good season, so it is nothing against him whatsoever. He played a very good game. It just was if he could have had that interception, you're talking about what is probably a different outcome.
Right.
On the other hand, the Olszewski muffed punt.
You just can't have that happen. It's just that simple.
As a team with an offense that is as bad as this team's offense is, it just can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at that too, and not just that, but the points that resulted from that were huge, because if he doesn't fumble that, the defense is not going to allow very many points to the opposing side as well.
Definitely. If he didn't fumble that, you're not getting that touchdown, and then you're probably winning the game. If you think about it, they had 14 points off of the Nelson Aguilar touchdown and the muffed punt.
Right.
And they scored 17 points.
Yeah.
As a team. Which means the defense clearly had a very good week. It's just, at the end of the day, you can't have those two critical errors, because
especially for a team like the Steelers, where you seem to look at it and almost every game is just very close, a one possession game or so.
And that more goes on the offense more than anything, because on the final 2 or 3 drives, the team went 3 and out 3 to 4 times in a row.
Right, and you can't do that when you're a team that wants to potentially go to the playoffs and wants to potentially be great. You obviously have to, come up clutch when the time matters, and they did not do that on offense.
Definitely. It was just, with the exception of Johnson, who was okay, it was kind of a down offensive week for everyone in general. Trubisky was quite frankly chucking the ball down too much, and the play calling once again was not inspiring. But with that, I say we're going to move on to the losers, and then we will do the winners of this week's game. Our first loser of this game was Mitchell Trubisky. So there's this whole thing going on in the fan base about who do you blame, Trubisky or Canada? And the honest truth is you don't really know until the people inside the organization know, but we as fans are unable to tell about if it's Trubisky who's just missing these open receivers and is locking in on these check down routes too often, or if it's Canada who's just not calling the right plays to get the people up, to get players open. The offense kind of seems to be blaming a good amount of this on Canada with certain players, even Johnson, Pickens, who was not getting the ball, Harris, and Claypool have all come out and said that they do not believe in the offensive philosophy, essentially, and some of that goes on the offensive coordinator, but some of it also goes on the quarterback for when you see these receivers who are open and not being able to get them the ball. Some of that, of course, also goes on the quarterback, who is Mitch Trubisky. The issue with Mitch Trubisky was that he had that one bad, really, really risky play, which wasn't good, but there were other opportunities where Pickens and Johnson were both wide open in order to score touchdowns or get big plays, and they were unable to capitalize on this because Trubisky was locked in on a check down. One really, really bad play was they checked it down to Jalen Warren on a 3rd and 8 when it was clear that they had Deontay running on what was an out route for what would have clearly been a first down, and Deontay would have had about a 20-yard catch and room to possibly go further. So while the Warren check down ended up going for 2 yards, and he ended up immediately getting tackled. So with that, it's just kind of something needs to be done.
I would also say that I think some of the blame for the offense, I think that realistically you have to put some of the blame on both Mitchell Trubisky and Matt Canada, because I think there have been moments where you've seen Mitchell Trubisky know who he's going to throw to before the play, because there were many times where you'd be watching and see clearly there's another receiver open, and then you throw a check down that just doesn't get the job done. And again, the check downs have a lot to do with Matt Canada as well, but you would also just like to see Mitchell Trubisky make some smarter plays with the football.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can definitely say that it's kind of a combination of the two of them, and both of them are definitely at some sort of blame. The second loser who I'd like to have here discussed is Matt Canada, who I feel like we've kind of gone into along with the Trubisky thing. To be frank, his play calling is unimaginative. It's more fit for what would be about a high school football team at that, and he needs to be fired. Maybe you look at the Steelers organization and say that it was a bad idea to ever keep that hire in-house, and they should have went out and gotten somebody legitimate. However, it's been a story over the last decade that the Steelers like to keep offensive coordinator hires in-house, and with that, it's kind of just been a whole painful stretch of people wasting offensive potential, whether it was Randy Fichtner or Matt Canada, Todd Haley, going back to even him. And I feel like there's one other one, but you kind of have to have that discussion about those guys and how they're not doing good for the offense and they're wasting the offensive potential of this team. And Matt Canada seems to be another example. Is this the Steelers being cheap and refusing to hire outside of the house? Or is it the Steeler way? Does it have something to do with the Rooneys? I don't know, but somebody needs to be held accountable for this. And I feel like you start with probably letting go of Canada.
Yeah, ideally you get that done. Ideally after the Browns game, if you don't see significant improvements, maybe you wait till the end of the season. But at some point you are going to need to do something, and you are going to need to make a realistic decision that you got to move on from the guy.
I could definitely agree upon that. Would you like to go on to the next loser?
Yeah, I would say that we would say the next loser was Najee Harris. In addition to going off of the O-line, who seems to be bad every week for the most part, I should say. But Najee Harris just didn't have a good game once again. Whenever there was holes, I don't think that he took advantage nearly as well as he should have at times. I felt that Jalen Warren, he had a couple of nice plays, considering that he is an undrafted rookie. But generally speaking, I did not think that Najee Harris did very well.
There were definitely a couple opportunities in which the offensive line, it should be noted, were making quality plays this week. They were setting they were actually setting a good amount of holes that Najee Harris could have taken. But Najee Harris, it seems like, has so little faith in them that he feels like he has to completely get everything by himself. And as a result, when holes do open up, he's almost scared to take them because he feels like that they're going to close.
I should note, too, that there was a nice play that Najee Harris made where he got out to the outside and he was able to, kind of use his athleticism, reach for that first down marker.
Yeah.
In addition to having a Deontay first down on that next play.
But then when you looked at that play call, the offensive line beat the New England defensive line up the middle. So he could have just taken that up the middle and gotten it. So when that comes down to, we just think that Najee Harris needs to have more faith in the offensive line as they start to get things together. And I know it might be hard to have faith in this offensive line because they haven't showed much so far, but if he doesn't have faith in them, when they are doing good, the Steelers as a team are not going to be able to take advantage of it. I feel like this also has a little bit to do with a little bit of a loss of speed due to Najee's injury, but Najee Harris is kind of starting to place himself on, let's just say, a couple of fantasy bust lists at this point, which is not great. And then I think the fourth loser is evident, if you would just like to talk about that.
Yeah, I think Gunnar Olszewski, with his muffed punt, you just simply can't do that in a low-scoring game like the Steelers have. You can't do that in any game, but particularly with the way our offense is performing. And whenever that costs us, it essentially cost us 7 points. And you could argue that probably cost us the game. And so I think that that's pretty self-evident that he would be considered another loser for that game.
And the one thing with that play was there were New England players all around him. He should have just gotten, I do not even care. He could have ran out of bounds, ran wherever. Just he should never have gone for that ball. And the Steelers also never had a guy blocking the guy on the left side of the field. They never had someone blocking the gunner on the left side of the field, which I don't know what type of system that is over there. But with the issue there, it's just like, if you see that somebody's right in front of you, just run away. Like, I'd rather that bounce 30 yards and run the 10-yard line in starting on offense. Yes, you probably wouldn't go 3
Right, and I think that you got to consider, too, with that, is you got to play smart football. You got to evaluate, and I know you can't do it. It's kind of hard to do this in real time, but just as a general sense of risk versus reward. Whereas I don't know what yard line that he exactly fumbled that on, but you consider maybe 10, 20 yards that you could have lost by the ball, potentially bouncing on back there versus catching it in a very risky situation where one bad move results in the New England Patriots having the ball.
Definitely. What I will say about Gunner, though, is that he's being used in a couple interesting ways in the running game, and they are getting him involved in the receiving game. So I think that this will be a one-time thing. I don't think that it should be a reoccurring thing. To any Steelers fans who are saying something like, please cut Gunner, no. I think Gunner is a very good player. I just think that he made a mistake this week that did definitely cost us a game. But, I mean, tons of players do that. That's a part of football. So you win some and you lose some. And then, so now I guess we'll move on to winners. Would you like to talk about the first winner?
Yeah, I think the first winner we've already discussed is Minkah Fitzpatrick with another week and another interception. This time it was another first quarter interception where it was another one that would swing the momentum. It may not have been a pick six, but it was important to maybe get Mac Jones rattled a little bit early, as well as with the Heinz Field atmosphere, and just swing the momentum in the directions of the Steelers.
It is Acrisure Stadium, by the way, but we're still getting used to that over here. But it's definitely a little bit interesting with all that, but yeah, no, Minkah Fitzpatrick's making a legitimate defensive player of the year conversation. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick having T.J. Watt get injured in the way that he did. Minkah Fitzpatrick, if he carries this defense to a legitimately good record while having 3 or 4 interceptions in these first couple weeks, he will end up being one of the leaders for DPOY at the end of the season. especially when TJ comes back, because TJ will probably miss enough time to where he's not involved. So that if Minka Fitzpatrick can just stand with Micah Parsons, who might also win Defensive Player of the Year, then either one could definitely be possible. But definitely. My second winner is DeMarvin Leal, who was playing a new position this week, as he was one of the guys who was set into, stud on PJ Watt with him not playing. So, I mean, what else can I say? He made a couple of impact plays this week. He made a couple of good pass breakups. He almost had an interception. And for a third-round pick, you especially like to be seeing that, especially how early he is playing. If you would like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I felt that he made a couple of really nice tackles too, and he's just been doing a great job of adjusting and doing what needs to be done, particularly with TJ out.
Definitely. And then my third winner is Chuks Okorafor. And last week we had Chuks Okorafor as a guy who was an honorable mention. But this week I think Chuks Okorafor, with just how he's playing, actually moves up to the winners category. There are multiple PFF stats stating that he is playing like a top 5, top 10 tackle in the NFL, even if he is on a horrible offensive line that is not doing anybody any favors. I feel like Chuks Okorafor deserves a shout out, especially this summer where you paid him that contract and a lot of people were questionable at best about that deal, where they were wondering, why are you giving Chuks Okorafor this amount of money? This year he's come in and he's proved that he's worth every dime that we've paid.
Absolutely. I think you do have to give him some credit for being the lone bright spot on our offensive line as well, considering too that he got paid over the summer and he's trying to prove his worth here.
Definitely. I'm excited about the future of Chuks Okorafor. And then the fourth one, with how bad the offense is, Presley Harvin didn't do anything necessarily to screw the Steelers out of anything, and they were saying he is punting further this year than he was punting last year, which is good development to see from what was a rookie punter last year.
Right, this is a kid who's got a very strong leg, and I think that particularly in the game against New England, he was able to show that off in many instances as well.
Definitely. So I guess we'll finish this off by just saying a couple of things that we generally believe. The first thing is that something offensively needs to be done. I don't know if this is Canada, I don't know if this is Trubisky, but something needs to be done. It's not going to be done for the Cleveland game, as that game is Thursday night, and they don't have the time to go completely reinvigorate the offense in the 3 days that they have before they have to go travel up to Cleveland. After that, when you have that 10-day break, is when you will start legitimately doing new things. This is why my prediction is that Steelers will probably lose to Cleveland, and it's just because they don't have the time to go through and really change anything much from the New England game. Unless the defense is playing lights out, of course, and it's like Cincinnati again, which could always happen. So that could definitely happen. But
I will also mention with regards to that, I think that I and a lot of other Steelers fans have mentioned that we would like to see George Pickens get the ball more. I think that him and Mitchell Trubisky were doing great in preseason, and I think we'd like to see him get some regular season catches here. We know the kid's talented, we know what he can do, and we just want to see some more of that.
I could definitely agree with the whole thing there. The thing is, I think Trubisky's going to get this week, and if there's no considerable improvement, they will probably fire Matt Canada. And we pray that they fire Matt Canada. But, I mean, knowing they're the Steelers, they won't do anything. But if there's no considerable improvement, the media will continue to get onto the Steelers about Matt Canada, and it would definitely not surprise me if he doesn't get fired at some point this year, if he's fired in the offseason. But what it really comes down to is there's even players on the offense speaking out and saying that the schemes that they're running are not working, so you need to switch something up there. And if you're wondering about Kenny Pickett, if Mitchell Trubisky is continuing to be the guy who is checking down and is locking in on receivers, it may be time to eventually give Pickett play. And if you were to give Pickett play, there would be no better game than Week 4 against the Jets. Because, I mean, the Jets are a good team, but they're not a great team. But you're talking about a new coach, and I think you would be able to get Zach Wilson acclimated. Not Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett. The thing with some people who are calling for Trubisky's benching in the New England game is that Bill Belichick historically feasts on rookie quarterbacks. He has an insane record against them if you were to look it up. But it's just at the point where you wouldn't want to just throwing him to Belichick would be throwing him to the Wolves. I would feel much more comfortable about letting him and Zach Wilson duel it out in a game than allowing him to go against the defense of the New England Patriots. If you would like to speak about your Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, so I think the real question that needs to be answered with Kenny Pickett is he going to make significant improvements over Mitch Trubisky? Is he going to be smarter with regards to his downfield vision in terms of making sure that he knows if guys are open, he's getting them the football, as well as making sure to avoid overthrowing guys, as we saw Mitch Trubisky oftentimes doing, as well as just saying, you know what, we can't be throwing it into traffic, we got to make some smart plays here.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's what I would definitely say about Kenny Pickett is last week I was like, I would not go to Kenny Pickett, and now I'm at the point where if it is Mitchell Trubisky and we see that again in Cleveland and we see that another week, then week 4 would probably be a good week because you're not going to throw him to the Wolves week 5 against Buffalo. That's just going to be death. And you're not going to throw him to Tampa Bay because Tom Brady would not be the best player for him to open his career against.
I think that is something that comes down more to the defense, which the Buccaneers do have a good defense.
The Buccaneers defense is probably the best in football. But Buffalo's probably
Buffalo and Tampa Bay too, very, very good
very elite defenses. You were not going to go throw a rookie quarterback at for his first.
But then the question with that becomes is if he does well enough against the Jets, do you continue with him against the Bills and the Buccaneers? And that's going to be a question that we answer as time goes on.
If he doesn't play against the Jets, I would say there's no way they'd play him against the Bills or the Buccaneers. Because at that point, if he doesn't play against the Jets, then you're probably winning the Cleveland game, but you're going to lose the Bills game and the Buccaneers game probably either way, would be my prediction at least. And then there's some later... So there's some easier opponents down the stretch. They have New Orleans, they have Atlanta, they have Carolina, they have, I think it's Indianapolis, who doesn't look great.
Right now they don't. I think that's another team that just starts off the season poorly and then they do well later on. But we'll have to see how they go with that.
But if you're doing really, really bad down the stretch, and Mitchell Trubisky does not look good, those would be the types of teams that I'd rather throw Kenny Pickett at if the reasoning is Kenny Pickett. But with that is another episode of the For the Fans podcast. We would just like to thank you all for checking in. We would just like to say that we would love if you would subscribe and like these videos as they go a long way in order to help us out and continue our journey. So we would just like to thank you. We would like to thank David for doing his recording. And that is it. Thank you.